Okay. Number 6, Russiagate. Two-headed monster of propaganda and censorship. Is Russiagate a censored story? In my view, not exactly. This entry seems to reflect a well-intentioned effort. This, by the way, is Paul Rosenberg, who is the senior editor of this weekly here that I'm reading it from. And I'm going to, as I did in the previous, I'll put the source there. So the bits that are between quotes are written by him. As in this case. Oh man. Russiagate, two-headed monster of propaganda and censorship. Is Russiagate a censored story? In my view, not exactly. This entry seems to reflect a well-intentioned effort to critically examine fake news-related issues within a censored story framework. It's important that these issues be raised, which is one reason why I suggested above that Project Censored add fake news as a new analytical category to examine annually along with its censored stories list. Junk food news and news abuse. What Project Censored calls attention to is important. Quote, corporate media coverage of Russiagate has created a two-headed monster of propaganda and censorship. By saturating news coverage with a sensationalized narrative, Russiagate has superseded other important newsworthy stories, close quote. As a frustrated journalist with omnivorous interests, I heartily concur. This is Paul again. But what's involved is too complex to simply be labeled propaganda. On the other hand, the censorship of alternative journalistic voices is a classic, well-defined Project Censored story, which suffers from the attempt to fit both together. So he's being critical in an interesting way. In April 2017, Aaron Mate reported for The Intercept on a quantitative study of MSNBC's The Rachel Maddow Show from February 20th to March 31st of 2017, which found that, quote, Russia-focused segments accounted for 53% of those broadcasts, Mate wrote. Quote, Maddow's Russia coverage has dwarfed the time devoted to other issues, top issues, including Trump's escalating crackdown on undocumented immigrants, 1.3% of coverage, Obamacare repeal, 3.8%, the legal battle over Trump's Muslim ban, 5.6%, a surge of anti-GOP activism and town halls since Trump took office, 5.8%, and Trump administration scandals and stumbles, 11%. Well and good, but is this propaganda? At TruthDig, Norman Solomon wrote, quote, as the cable news network most trusted by Democrats as a liberal beacon, MSNBC plays a special role in fueling rage among progressive-minded viewers toward Russia's attack on our democracy, that is somehow deemed more sinister and newsworthy than corporate dominance of American politics, including Democrats. Racist voter suppression, gerrymandering, and many other U.S. electoral defects all put together, close quote. Also true, but not so much propaganda as Project Censored's broader category of news abuse, which includes propaganda and spin, among other forms of, quote, distraction to direct our attention away from what we really need to know, close quote. To fully grasp what's involved requires a more complex analysis. On the other hand, you're the senior editor and you use on the other hand, Paul Rosenberg? I'm a little disappointed in several things here. I like what you're trying to do, but I don't know who edited this. On the other hand, the censorship of alternative journalistic voices is far more clear-cut and straightforward. In a report for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Robin Anderson examined Russiagate-inspired censorship moves by Twitter, Google, and others. A key initial target was RT. Quote, RT's reporting bears striking similarities to alternative and independent media content, and that is why letting the charges against RT stand unexamined is so dangerous, close quote, Anderson noted. That's Robin Anderson. In fact, the government's intelligence report on RT included its reporting on the dangers of fracking as part of its suspect activity. Beyond that, the spillover suppression was dramatic. Quote, yet in the battle against fake news, much of the best, most accurate independent reporting is disappearing from Google searches, Anderson said. The World Socialist website, 8217, reported that Google's new search protocol is restricting access to leading independent, left-wing, progressive, anti-war, and democratic rights websites. The estimated declines in traffic generated by Google searches for news sites are striking, close quote. There were declines for alternet.org, 63%, democracynow.org, 36%, counterpunch.org, 21%, consortiumnews.com, 47%, mediamatters.org, 42%, and theintercept.com, 19%, among others. Those were all negatives. They were declines. On top of that, in Rolling Stones, Matt Taibbi, man, this thing is copy-edited very poorly. I've seen that a lot in this one, though, in this particular weekly. On top of that, Rolling Stones' Matt Taibbi pointed to much broader stifling of alternative views. Quote, 2 years ago, remember the American political establishment was on the ropes. From Trump to Bernie Sanders to Brexit to Catalonia, voter repudiation of the status quo was the story of the day. The sense of panic among political elites was palpable. 2 years later, the narrative has completely shifted. By an extraordinary coincidence, virtually all the anti-system movements and candidates that so terrified the political establishment 2 years ago have since been identified as covert or overt Russian destabilization initiatives. We've jumped straight past debating the efficacy of democracy to just reflexively identifying most anti-establishment sentiment as illegitimate, treasonous, and foreign in nature. Taibbi continued. This is Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone. Project Censored noted, many people, quote, many people suffer when lies are reported as facts, but it seems that corporate media are the only ones that profit when they reinforce blind hostility against not only Russia, but also legitimate domestic dissent. Close quote. Interesting. So again, the bits that I'm reading in between are written by Paul Rosenberg. He is the senior editor of this weekly. That one folded in really perfectly to the previous discussion we were having, to be honest. We're 7 minutes from the end. If I can tuck in the fourth one, then we can do 3 and 2 tomorrow. Not the end, but the end of the hour. I love getting up to the top of the hour. Once we're at the top of the hour, I can stop whenever I want because it's an anticlimactic non-show, which means I can just suddenly hit the button and it can be over, which I love. That was the genius involved. Whoever named the show should be paid, you know, dozens of shekels. Okay. This one I don't even know how to think about this one. When I read this the other day, I thought to myself, boy, am I glad Project Censored exists, and Paul here, Rosenberg, I keep saying your name first name because I keep forgetting your surname, I'm sorry. But I'm so glad you guys exist at Rosenberg, right, are here and are asking me here in the holiday season to take a look at this information. So this one is kind of interesting. Number 4. How big wireless convinced us cell phones and Wi-Fi are safe. Are cell phones and other wireless devices really as safe as we've been led to believe? Don't bet on it, according to decades of buried research reviewed in a March 2018 investigation for The Nation magazine by Mark Hertzgaard and Mark Dowie. Quote, the wireless industry not only made the same moral choices that the tobacco and fossil fuel industries did, it also borrowed from the same public relations playbook those industries pioneered, Hertzgaard and Dowie reported. Quote, like their tobacco and fossil fuel brethren, wireless executives have chosen not to publicize what their own scientists have said about the risks of their products. On the contrary, the industry in America, Europe, and Asia has spent untold millions of dollars in the past 25 years proclaiming that science is on its side and that the critics are quack and that consumers have nothing to fear, close quote. Their report comes at the same time as several new developments are bringing the issue to the fore, including a Kaiser Permanente study published December 2017, a year ago, in Scientific Reports, finding much higher risks of miscarriage. A study in the October 2017 American Journal of Epidemiology finding increased risk for glioma, a type of brain tumor, and a disclosure by the National Frequency Agency of France that 9 out of 10 cell phones exceed government radiation safety limits when tested in the way they are actually used, next to the human body. 9 out of 10 cell phones exceed government radiation safety limits when tested in the way they are actually used, next to the human body. As The Nation reported, George Carlo was a scientist hired by the Cellular, Telecommunications, and Internet Association in 1993. This is like when the dawn of the internet, to research cell phone safety and allay public fears, heading up the industry-financed Wireless Technology Research Project. But he was unceremoniously fired and publicly attacked by the Cellular, Telecommunications, and Internet Association in 1999 after uncovering disturbing evidence of danger. Carlo sent letters to each of the industry's chieftains on October 7th of 1999, reiterating that the Wireless Technology Research Project had found the following, quote, "The risk of rare neuroepithelial tumors on the outside of the brain was more than doubled in cell phone